You're listening to the No Schedule Man podcast with Kevin Bulmer, exploring real stories and lessons learned with a variety of special guests. To learn more about Kevin and to access other episodes of the podcast, please visit noscheduleman.com and connect and contribute at NoScheduleMan on Twitter or Instagram and on Facebook, YouTube, and SoundCloud, all /NoScheduleMan. Thanks for listening and enjoy the No Schedule Man podcast.
Struggle with reality.
Hi, I'm Kevin. Thanks so much for taking some time to join me. I'm grateful that you're here, and I hope that you're having a great day. Today, something a little bit different, something that we've not done with the No Schedule Man podcast so far in the first 20 episodes. Today, it's just you and me. And with that in mind, I think we'll just get into it and see how it goes. Now, what I wanted to talk about today, and also encourage and ask your thoughts, is what I feel is the subjective nature of ideas like greatness, balance, and success. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is that, like everybody else that's looking to try to improve themselves or is on what I would call a personal development journey, always evolving and looking to get a little bit better, you look up to people that are a little bit further down the path than you are, as mentors, I suppose, and see what you can learn from them. And so I have a number of people in that regard that I look up to. Some of them are friends and colleagues, people in my community and that I know through my work circles. And others are people that I don't know personally, but that I look up to. People like John Assaraf is a great example of that. Bob Proctor and Sandy Gallagher are terrific examples of that. And another guy that I like to tune into every once in a while is James Arthur Ray. Now, you might remember him and the others that I mentioned from the movie The Secret. James Arthur Ray you might more immediately remember as the guy that talks about the genie in the bottle and your wish is my command and all of that kind of stuff. Now, he's had an interesting path, as we all have, and I won't get into the whole biography of James now. You can look it up and find out about what some of his ups and some of the real big downs were for him. But I like to check in with him from time to time because in my impression, he's a little bit more aggressive and in your face than some of the others are. And I, for one, appreciate that. I like being not confronted, but coached and cajoled a little bit. And I don't mind you jabbing a stick into my ribs and saying, hey, Kev, look into the mirror and be a little bit more honest with yourself. Do you see what's really going on here? Are you making honest choices or are you just making excuses? For one, I need to hear that from time to time. But a while back, I was watching one of James Arthur Ray's videos, and at the end of it, he got talking about the idea of balance and said, and I'm paraphrasing, but I think the quote was that the idea of balance is baloney. And that kind of got the hair on the back of my neck up a little bit. And I thought, boy, I'm going to make that a podcast because I disagree with that. Although he's the one who's built multi-million-dollar companies a few times over and not me. So who am I to disagree? But I'm allowed to have an opinion, just the same as you are. And I'm going to share it here. Then more recently, I watched another one where he was talking about greatness. And I almost immediately tuned out on him because he used some names as examples of greatness that just made me shut off. Where I thought, if that's the example that I should aspire to follow of living a life of greatness, then I think I'll settle for ordinary. And I'm not trying to be too critical here. I'm just telling you how I feel, and I welcome your thoughts. But he mentioned names like Tiger Woods, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jackson, and how they are examples of greatness. Now, I cringe when I hear or I see stuff like that. I don't know any of those individuals personally. Obviously, Michael Jackson is no longer with us. I don't know Tiger Woods. I don't know Kobe Bryant. Michael Jordan is another one that gets tossed around a lot as an example of greatness. And he was an absolutely unbelievable talent when it came to basketball and certainly marketing and promoting an image. And again, I don't know him. He doesn't know me. I doubt he would ever care what I have to think. But if you say the name Michael Jordan to me, I think win at all costs, ruthless, almost vicious in terms of the level of competition. Tiger Woods, Michael Jackson. Would anybody argue that they were great at what they did? that they weren't incredible talents in their field? I don't think you can. Regardless of what you might have thought of some of the things that Michael Jackson may or may not have been involved in, and I don't know. But I think most of us can agree that creatively, he was an extraordinary talent. Wouldn't you agree with that? Musically, dancing, just an unbelievable creative talent. Was adored by millions of people all over the world and probably made buckets of money. Tiger Woods, you could make an argument that we've never seen anybody like that in professional sports, and we may never see anybody like that again with what he did from the late 90s in through the mid-2000s. Adored by millions of people all over the world. Made buckets of money from winning golf tournaments and endorsements. But in either case of those two guys, would you want to have trade places with them? I'm just asking. I'll think about Michael Jackson for a second. Yeah, an absolute, in my opinion, creative genius. But it seemed to me, from everything that we were exposed to from a great distance and filtered through the media, and be careful with that is my opinion, but seemed to me to really be a tortured soul. I wouldn't have traded places with that, nor the same with a guy like Tiger Woods. I wish him all the best. He and I don't know each other, but when you look at what's happened over the last few years and the way that it would appear his personality was constructed to just win at all costs, destroy the competition, stay laser focused on winning. Is that greatness? I suppose you could say that it is. Is that what we should aspire to in our lives? Maybe it is. And if it is for you, go ahead. It's not what I want for my life. It's absolutely not what I want for my life. Balance is another buzzword. I'm going to come back to that greatness in a second. Balance is another buzzword that I see a lot of people arguing about. On one hand, I mentioned James Arthur Ray, and I heard him say things like, and again, I'm paraphrasing, that the idea of balance is baloney. You know, the great people, the successful people, that they drive themselves hard and they're always on the go and they work relentlessly toward their goals. And all that part I agree with. But then there are others like, I'll give you a name in the online entrepreneurial world and social media giant, Gary Vaynerchuk, that he'll suggest, you've got to work your face off and you've got to be driving hard all the time. And there are parts of that I absolutely agree with as well. You've got to stay focused and you've got to work hard. And you can't be looking for the get-rich-quick pill and expecting a really quick fix. That there is really no substitute for having laser-focused and working hard day after day after day after day after day. But now on the other extreme, maybe you read a book like U Squared, U2, by Price Pritchett, which basically suggests that you need to continue to take focused action, but that not really necessarily put a whole lot more effort in. He would basically equate it to trying harder as being like the fly bashing itself against the window. We've all been there, right? Where there's a fly inside the house and it flies itself into the window and into the window. Bang, bang, bang. And so what does it do? It tries harder. It does more. Well, that's like the analogy I mentioned a little while ago, where sometimes a wall comes up. You can try harder. You can work harder. You can stay up all hours and drive yourself harder than the competition. But sometimes if you don't just step back, if you're the fly, maybe stop bashing your skull against the window pane. Stop and look, and you'll see that 10 feet over is an open door. And you can fly through there, and then all of a sudden, a whole new world opens up to you. So which is it? Not trying harder and having a different perspective, or having the engine pegged all the time? I think it's a little bit of both, don't you? Again, I feel this is subjective. Might be a little bit different for every person. I just feel it's a little dangerous to suggest that there's any one model that you can apply to achieve certain results. And it's something that I try to keep in mind. And I'm wondering if your experience is similar to when you are following after somebody. Maybe it's even listening to me. That take it with a grain of salt. See what resonates. Be honest with yourself enough to be able to hear an idea that you can internalize and go, you know what? Yeah, I'm not doing that because I'm making excuses about X, Y, or Z, or I am doing too much of this and it's not a healthy habit and I need to pull back. And I'm not saying that's easy, but something maybe to keep in mind. I know that for me in the past, when I've left myself on overdrive for an extended period of time without taking the right opportunity to rest and reflect, my engine blows. And until what I would suggest was pretty recently, I'd go through periods of extremely high productivity and then crash. I'd get sick or I'd just kind of get tripped up in general, have extreme fatigue, and then all of a sudden a week would go by. I'm not getting to the gym. I'm not investing as much time into some of my creative pursuits like this podcast, like some music, like my writing and other different things like that. My work would suffer. My physical well-being would take a little bit of a step back. Whereas I seem to get a lot more done more consistently when I'm more of the tortoise than I am the hare. So can you be the hare and be like that all the time? I just think that's a dangerous thing to chase. It's just my opinion. It wasn't until I finally prioritized health and happiness and contentment above everything else that things really started to change for me. And that was well after I'd prioritized making sure that my time with my 2 boys was off limits to pretty much everything else. So that was the first thing. And then I kept having all these other different goals about creative pursuits, level of income, different things that I wanted to achieve, that I wanted to do or not do. And I would get going really, really well for a while, and then I'd get tripped up. And then I'd get going really well for another while, and I'd get tripped up. And it wasn't until I finally decided that, okay, well, it's already ingrained in my DNA. When I'm with my 2 kids, that's off limits to everything else. Now, you may or may not have that in your life. If you're a parent, or maybe your kids are grown, or maybe you don't have any kids yet. That's why I think it's subjective for each of us, this idea of balance and success and greatness. Because for me, I could accomplish all sorts of wonderful things out in the world and be viewed as really talented and be adored by millions. But if I've let down those 2 kids, is that greatness? It isn't, at least as far as I'm concerned. So I had already woven that into my DNA, that they came first. Then when I finally got the idea of, all right, well, I have a lot of things I want to do. I have a voice that I believe I want to shape through doing and share with the world and do whatever I can to try to help some other people. But I'm not going to be able to do that to its maximum effect or to sustain it if I'm not in the game all the time. And in order to do that, I better get more healthy, more consistently than I've been. And this was actually in March of this past year. It's October of 2016 while I'm recording this. That's when the light finally went on for me. And once I started prioritizing that, and every single morning when I write down my goals and my intentions, the very first thing that I write down is, I'm so happy and grateful now that I am 100% healthy, happy, calm, and content. And that helps me to be able to understand of when I'm pulling back because I'm just thinking, I already worked hard this morning, maybe I'll pull back a little bit this afternoon. No, you're making excuses. You've still got gas in the tank. You're just letting your focus wander. Versus when you've had a sustained period of high-level activity and your tank is just running low. You're running out of oil, but the engine is still revving high. And if you keep doing that, it's going to seize up on you. Sometimes you need to pull in for a pit stop for more than 12 or 13 seconds or whatever they're doing in NASCAR. But once I got that as the first priority, health and happiness, then everything else seemed to stem from that because that fueled both my fitness goals, getting to the gym, and what I was doing there, my diet, my sleep habits. See, this whole idea of, well, even if you've got a full-time job and you've got kids like I do, well, you can stay up until 2 o'clock in the morning and get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Just my opinion, I think that's a bad idea. I think that's a bad idea. You're going to pay a price for that sooner or later. I know that for me, once I started prioritizing getting a really good deep sleep every night, it took a little while, but I started to change some habits, and that actually started to happen. And I got up earlier every morning, and I do stay up a little bit later. I'm certainly working later than I ever have. But I also know, okay, Kev, there are times when you've got to stop, and now's one of them. So your tank's almost empty. Stop, get some rest, and come back when you're fresh. One of the things that I've learned about myself is that I feel good when I'm doing things and feeling productive. But if I'm doing that all the time without ever taking the opportunity to slow down or to let my mind reset and my body restore itself, I eventually crash. I've seen that about myself over and over and over again. And when that happens, that just blows up my momentum. And then I got to get the whole machinery cranked back up again after the crash. Now, I'm not saying that's what's necessarily right for you. I've just found that out about myself, is that some level of consistency seems to be better in the aggregate rather than burn hard, crash, burn hard and crash. Now, maybe some people can burn hard all the time and never crash. Some people have more energy than others. I just think that you can't always have the engine pegged. It just doesn't work. In the long term, sooner or later, you're going to pay a price, in my opinion. But I'm all for hard work. I'm still in the process of trying to find what I would call my maximum level of effectiveness without going too far over the line, and also without pulling back too far too much of the time. I know that if I sit and do nothing, I don't feel very good either. So I also don't feel good if I'm with my boys, say, my 2 kids, and I'm feeling distracted, like I should be working or doing something else. I used to be like that earlier in my life, and I don't want to go back there because my time with my boys is finite. It's not going to be the way that it is now forever, and there's going to come a time where I'll have lots more time to be able to work when they're off grown doing their own thing. And I don't want to have the regret of letting that time slip away. Again, that's a personal choice and the one that I've made. I want to be fully present in every moment, whether I'm with the people that I love or just taking the time to reflect or digging in and really getting things done. So presence can be in working, can be in being with the people that you love, can be in doing the activity that you love most. But whenever I'm thinking, I should put this work down and I really need to put my feet up. Or I should put my feet down and have my kids entertain themselves with their iPhones for a little bit so that I can go and get that blog finished or edit that podcast or write that speech or just do a little bit more work. Yeah, when I'm leaning too far one way or the other and I'm pulling myself out of the present, that's no good for me. So for me, that's the idea of balance, is that whatever you're doing and wherever you are, be present and totally engaged in that. And like I say, I like to be doing things most of the time. I like learning, I like creating, I like moving forward. But I'm not willing to compromise my time with my kids, as I mentioned, or my sweetheart, Caroline. That might not be the case for you. Perhaps you don't have any family commitments, and you get an incredible sense of fulfillment from the activities that you engage in. And maybe you choose to devote more time to that because your life is made up differently from me. Well, I'm not going to spend as much time working at the things as you might, because the time that I have with my 2 sons, as I've mentioned, it's not up for debate. But maybe your situation is different from that. On the other hand, I don't sit around at night watching TV. I don't go to bars, and in fact, I don't even drink anymore. I'm finding more and more that I enjoy the social aspect of the things that I do, and as that continues to evolve, the less I seem to feel the need to unwind through other sort of traditional social means. And I guess I'm maybe more along the lines of what Gary Vaynerchuk was saying there. I don't like sitting around watching the grass grow. And usually when my boys and I are together, we're doing something. Sometimes we'll sit and watch a hockey game, and everybody needs to decompress sometimes. But when they're with their mom and I have time on my own, for the most part, I'm trying to get things done because I enjoy that more than just sitting around eating Cheetos. Now, I'm not saying that to pass judgment on anybody that does sit and watch TV or like to go out for dinner or drinks with friends. If that's your thing, fine. But it just kind of brings me back to my point. I feel the idea of balance and success and greatness is different for just about everyone. Like what I had mentioned about where James Arthur Ray talked about greatness and using the examples of Kobe Bryant, of Tiger Woods, of Michael Jackson. Well, they were all great or are great at what they do. And probably what he meant was that in order to be great or achieve a level of mastery with anything, that you need to be able to come at that with a laser focus and the commitment and the dedication to keep coming back to it, like the tortoise, every day, even if it's in little bits and pieces. I just feel that if the danger is in thinking, oh, I got to be like Tiger Woods, maniacal about and almost myopic on one thing to let that dominate my life and lose perspective on other things, and basically compromise my ability to be a decent human being overall, an emotionally aware, self-aware, emotionally mature human being in order to be great at a certain sport, to make a lot of money and be adored across the world, at least earlier in his career. If that's greatness, I don't want it. Greatness to me is giving the most effort that you can, but being there for the people that you love, being a kind, compassionate, empathetic, forgiving person who prioritizes his or her health, self-love, fully realizes their potential in terms of their creativity, their contribution to their community. That's great. But that might look different from 10 different people and 10 different sets of results. But does one become more great than another? There again, I think I've maybe taken James Ray's idea and maybe taken it off into a tangent and scripted it in a way that maybe he wasn't necessarily intending, but that's why I'm doing the podcast. And then along the lines of what Gary Vaynerchuk was talking about, that is that if you want to build a business, if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to have success, you've got to work your face off. And yeah, I agree with that. I just think that the idea of work yourself until 2 o'clock in the morning and then get back up at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning and get going again and drive yourself at maximum capacity all the time is a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. I don't think it's sustainable. But if you can prioritize your health, if you can be focused, if you can have done the work to really understand what is right for you and what you are passionate about, and not listen to all the naysayers or the scripts where you think that what you should be doing or not be doing, but you're being true to yourself, and then pour everything that you have into that, absolutely. But I think you still want to be conscious of, am I doing what's best for the long term, for my overall health, my well-being, my sense of self, my relationships with, whether you have kids or not, whether you have a spouse or not, whether you have family members that are close by that you rely on for relationship and they to you, time with your friends. If you take it into a really singular, almost myopic viewpoint, I suppose I would challenge that. How do you find out what really your purpose is? Well, one of my favorite tools for understanding that is a question that I first came across reading Gay Hendricks' book called 5 Wishes. And in that, he suggests imagining yourself at the end of your life and looking back on it to see if you feel it was a success or not. Think about that for a second. Because we all assume that we've got a little bit of runway in front of us. But what if today was your last day? If it was, how do you feel about what you spent your time on today and the day before and the day before? If you knew that today was your last day, what would you have done differently in the days preceding today? Now, I'm not talking about running off and joining the circus or doing a bungee jump or a skydive. Well, maybe that's what you would like to do. Go do it. Do it. Or if you're looking back on your life and judging whether or not it was a success, why or why not? And the why nots, those are the things that you want to start putting some time and attention into right now. I've done this, and it's absolutely changed my life when I realized the things that were important to me about expressing my creative potential, being in a conscious, loving, supportive, dynamic, exciting relationship. I found out that that was really important to me. Some other things like the rock band bucket list project I've got on the go, Mutineer, it makes absolutely no sense for me to be trying to do, but I'm working at it because I've gone through this exercise that if I look back on my life and see that I've not at least tried, I'll regret it. I know I will regret it. That's why this podcast exists. I thought about it for years before finally starting it, and it was on the list of things that I thought I wish I'd had the courage to at least try, to at least get it started and get going. So think about that. What do you think? What does greatness mean to you? And is that even an idea that we should be chasing? And here's a thought, and maybe this is a separate episode all on its own. Is it a person that becomes great, or is it what they do that becomes great? And then do you try to define each even further from there? That's a whole other avenue. But is greatness an idea that you aspire to? And if so, what does it look like for you? Success, similar. How would you define success? You've heard my definition of it, and it's always evolving. But I'd love to know, what would you consider a success? When you get to the end of your days and you look back on your life, what will be the things that you will have wanted to see from yourself or not see that will make you feel as if you lived your life successfully. And what about balance? Is that idea baloney? Or should we be continuing to aspire to have some sense of equilibrium between all of the different things that are going on in our lives, and maybe some of them that we want to go on less, and attaining or making some time for some of the things that we would like to be doing more? Is balance an idea that we should be pursuing? And how does that look to you? I would really love to know. And there's any number of ways that you can share your thoughts with me. NoScheduleMan.com is the home for all things that I'm doing. And if you go to the podcast page there, you'll find episode 20. That's this episode. You can click there and that'll take you to the blog post, and we can have a bit of a discussion there if you want to leave a comment. Our Facebook page, facebook.com/NoScheduleMan. You're always welcome to participate there. Or I think it would also be easy on YouTube. All of the podcast episodes, including this one, and you might be listening on YouTube right now. You can leave comments there. They're all available on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/NoScheduleMan. Let me know what you think. What is your idea of greatness? What's your thought on success, and how do you feel about balance? I'd love to know. If there were any one specific roadmap, we'd all be following it, wouldn't we? And I think that's the challenge, and the whole reason behind doing something like this is that there doesn't seem to be, because we're all individuals, but that doesn't stop us from looking for it. So good luck on the journey. I wish you all the health and happiness that you desire, and I really appreciate you joining me. We'll see you next time on the No Schedule Man podcast.
Just a little deja vu.